over the barrel, so to speak. On the last one, we got a pretty good deal. This one, they could go somewhere else. It's kind of a, I don't want to talk about the admin part, that is the real cost, but the rest of it kind of, somebody said it wasn't, but it kind of free money in that sense. And the more you do, the more time you go over you get. So you may want to take some cut to keep the relationship going, because there's going to be down the road. So you don't want to. Our leverage now is we can drive a hard bargain, but then they can say, "Okay, so we go somewhere else." Whereas with a mall, they needed it, they wanted it, no one else is playing with them. So,
right, but I think, and I had a discussion with Tom. I think we have to look at it from a policy standpoint. There are many situations where perhaps a JED in the city or the township doesn't make any sense at whatever percentage you come at, because the purpose of JEDs originally and generally in the perimeter around your city, where you talk about sharing services and you share the tax revenue. This is kind of an anomaly, and if we're just looking for a funding source at some point, if we ever did have a different JED that materialized somewhere, at some point I think we need to look at that from a policy standpoint and suggest maybe there is a floor. And I think there are with other cities. I think that was part of the discussion that Westerville had with them. At that level, it's not just their time and effort in saying, here, I'm going to sell our tax rate for a higher rate to the highest bidder. There's a lot of other issues surrounding the whole concept, because it's not really, it's kind of a hybrid, and everybody's kind of looking to find funding. It's one thing when those revenues are going for specific infrastructure improvements, but this is more just, hey, let's see what, when, where, and perhaps that's why we might be considering it. But getting into it, well, we don't want to lose this deal. I'm not so sure, with the numbers you're floating around, that it ultimately becomes one of those things where we somewhat have to compromise looking at what is logical growth and how should taxes be generated and things be funded. But I think, again, that might be something just to consider too, even with the response back, is that I think if you talk to a lot of other cities, what is that floor? They may not, they say, yeah, it doesn't make sense. We're not really providing any services per se, but neither is the township to any great extent, at least directly out of their operations. That we're, 25 is the minimum amount, and we would look at.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be, wouldn't be a debt.
25, and then still the 4, or is the 4 come off the 25, in your opinion?
I'd be 25 off the net, and then in addition to the 4% that you're already getting.
Because we're talking the same thing.
Yeah, right. I guess that's how you got your,
yeah.
right. So I think for our purposes, it would be, they've given us essentially 14%, we counted with 25. So that, to me, that's what I would do is I would have Darren follow up. I won't be here, and he can just get back to, I don't know if you want to just reach out to Don or to Jeff.
Yeah,
George.
he called me before, and I told him it would make sense to talk about now.
Yeah, but so
you need anything from me?
no, I just think that if that's okay with you two, then I think Darren can follow up, and then we'll see if they're okay with it. At some point, a petition comes back. You've got to go through the legislative process and all of that. They just want to know for purposes of meeting with their trustees. Yeah. Yeah, we're going from 40 to 25.
Right. And they're trying.
And if we want to say that, that the ad, we're going to take the, I don't know, you want to bump up the admin by 1%, maybe we're at 24%, you take the admin up to 5% or something. But
Yeah, that increases that admin portion, I think stays the same. I think there's language in the existing agreement that says at some point in the future,
it gets
that'll be reviewed for, I don't have a problem doing with that, because I think I can justify the 3-4 times the cost already into it. And that's okay with that moving forward with this other one too, so it kind of can be looked at separately, and it should be.
Right.
Because that may someday roll back to 2%. So what we're negotiating, keep that the same until we have a better feel.
right, and
then it's just what our.
reduce back by 15 to, going from 40 to 25. So that's just FYI for you guys now at this point. And then just related, Berkshire, we were contacted by the attorney who represents the NCA, the new community authority that was set up, Kip Wallers. Kip was involved in the negotiations that led to the formation of the NCA and all the other financing mechanisms that were put in place out there. They have been approached. Joe Simonella, who's a developer, I don't know if you've seen his signs out there, but they're all over the place. He owns a lot of property out there. They're looking at doing a residential a new community authority on residential property where we would be the proximate city. So they're just asking us, what do we think? Darren actually pulled out some of the documents that and kind of refreshed our memory about this. And you may recall that in the new community authority that was put in place on the mall property, the city has some millage that's coming back to us. And we'll start realizing that in full later this year and next year, just because last year was a partial tax year. It's like 1.5 mils, and there's 1.5 mils. And so he's asked us about, just kind of testing the waters. And I had Darren pull out the agreement. Darren, you want to just fill in the blanks there in terms of?
It was more complicated than I remembered initially, so I don't think you get one what I know is, but there's actually, I'll put it down, there's two different charges. There's the outlet mall charge, and that's where we get the 1.5 mils, and there's a residential something charge on the houses that are out there, because to get their acreage that they needed to qualify, they made deals with Nationwide and somebody else to get the parcel big enough. And that millage is different, and that goes to different sorts of schools. So while I thought, we get 1.5 mils on the whole thing, it's actually we get 1.5 mils on the outlet mall, and there's the residential NCA goes to a different sort of school. So they want to expand the residential portion. So our initial reaction was we should get our same village, but then I looked back at it and we don't get any notes on that. So that's kind of what the thing is right now. We decided what we want to do. It's got less of a tie that we should ask for something. It's not the outlet mall, but
Yeah, right. I mean, at the time, we were in a fairly good negotiating position. Not that we are now because with the proximate city, but the question is what's fair. We knew that everything that we did with respect to the mall was based on the fact that that was a that was going to have impact on that 37 quarter. Arguably, housing is as well, but that's how we justified, I think, the JED, the small millage amount that we had, money that we wanted dedicated money for the 36, 37. So the question now is, you want us to go back and try to negotiate some millage, or just leave it the way it is?
one option would be trying to negotiate the millage. They'll be pretty ticked off about it. That's right. The other option is to get creative. So the millage, the millage from the mall comes from the mall. So one thing, the millage on the residential would come from residents. So when they see it on the bill, they're going to be asking about it. So we probably want to think about our response to that. Being really point about should we be doing that? Also might be a possibility of a one-time payment or something, a middle ground, rather than sticking at every house with $800. We could say, well, somehow it has some impact on us, give us X amount of dollars up front for 12 days or something. I don't know if we've ever done that, but that would give you middle ground if you really wanted something that didn't feel comfortable putting a mill on someone's house who doesn't live in the city.
And the other side, I think we have to be a little cautious. I mean, we've got an NCA in place, and it's like saying, should the county come to us, a kind of portion of our NCA, or the township, because those people, residents drive on township roads and they use other facilities. We live in that world where we've got to work cooperatively with our other jurisdictions, and just to kind of chase after, the complexity of keeping track with that whole first go round. It's one thing there because, as Tom said, it was a big impact. It's an outlet mall. This has impacts outside that general area. The residential is no different than, what if they put a residential right beside it that didn't have an NCA? It's the same impact, and it's I think a little different.
Yeah. I mean, we might want to just,
Right.
yeah, right. So I wouldn't have any issue with just signing off on the proximate city resolution and not trying to hold it up with a millage request. I agree. I don't. Yeah. I can say that, just to refresh your memory, We also negotiated so Darren referred to that sales tax surcharge. If you go out there and buy something, you see your receipt, there's a half a percent that goes to the county. The county uses that to pay Simon Tanger for the cost of all that infrastructure. Once that goes away, once that's paid for, which is probably the next 10 to 15 years, if not longer, that, which is about $700,000 a year, we receive 25% of that. That's do it. So, I mean, way forward, we'll have a larger revenue stream. We don't have that today, but we'll have that in the future, because that sales tax charge is permanent. What changes is how it gets distributed. Exactly. Once Simon Tanger gets their piece paid, then the county takes a piece and the city takes a piece. And I can't remember if the township's got any, Darren, or not, but anyway.
There was something there, I think maybe we only got a quarter of it.
So we may need that depending on the point project, how long that takes. So.
I'll be the only one here left for that.
Yeah. So anyway, that was a sidebar, but we'll just get back. If you guys are okay, which is okay. That really is a good segue to New Community Authority for Evans. You'll recall that we had some discussions about whether we should consider requesting some millage. We had done some analysis in-house and concluded that it really wasn't worth us asking for it, and it really gets back to the point Dean made. You know, we have impacts on what happens in Merlin Township. So in that case, we were going to recommend that we just move ahead with the proximate city petition. When it comes to you, it'll probably come to you in either April or May, and approve it without the request for that millage charge. That was really kind of the way we came down on it, and we just felt more comfortable doing it that way. They are our neighbor, and at some point they may approach us. Orange Township may, or Berlin Township may, for a JED. That's what I've heard, but I don't know the status of those negotiations. So. Yeah, they do it. So we can, I can have Darren put that on for probably first reading for the 24th. I think we should probably go 2 readings on it. And
We have to stick up.
yeah, there is. You can just let Emmett Kelly know that we'd like whatever. He gave us the petition document, whether that's updated. But Elaine could just make a note that for the meeting on the 24th would be first reading on the proximate city petition for the NCA, for the Evans NCA. Pardon? Okay. The last item that I want to just chat with you about is some adjustments to the CIP. This doesn't require any action of the Finance Committee tonight. We're simply kind of bringing you up to speed on some adjustments that we've been talking about to the CIP, most of which are driven by the positive ending we had in 2016 financially, and by the award that we received from the MORPC funding. And essentially, we're looking at additional funding. Again, this is I guess, based upon where we are right now with, and we're looking at distributing money into some resurfacing, some grant money for the Point project, and also for signal improvements. Some of these projects, the second and third bullet there, are MORPC related and may not occur until 2018. We don't know yet. But the one project I would like to get going on this year would be the engineering house, getting that taken down and getting that parking lot put in place. That's going to take some time because we have to, because it's in the historic area, we've got to document why we're doing it and that there was no feasible alternative. So I can have Dean walked through this, the sheet that you have here. Again, this was not for any action tonight, and we meant to get this out to you earlier, but with the situation with Joe, we just weren't able to. So this has been something that's been kind of percolating for a while.
As you recall, there's been
Wait,
discussion.
I'm sorry, before you get off, did you want to be pointed? Oh, yeah, yeah. Real quickly, this is a sketch of what engineering has done for the parking lot, and that's attached. That's attached. I think you were looking at that, Chris, but that just basically shows taking down the building and what you'd be able to gain. You're not picking up parking as much as you're getting. You're improving that access into that lot and making that a dedicated public parking lot.
And this map doesn't show
Any
potentially what's been considered about that
taking up the back of the Gazette
The
building,
back
but
third
obviously that's
to connect the two lots.
Yeah, that's kind of.
Oh, I see, so, couldn't figure out where the building was at, I see it's dotted there on that.
Yeah, you see it, Chris?
Yeah, I got it.
Right. So what we want to do is just make that more of a defined entryway as a public parking lot. Because right now, you've got that little narrow alley, you've got a house there, you don't know whether to pull in or not. But if we put that down as a public parking lot and sign it appropriately, I think that adds, that adds now
Well, there's
29 to 30 spaces across the street.
There's always like, some police cars out there too.
Yeah, what we have to do, Chris, is juggle some of our city staff cars, what we do with those after hours.
Okay.
But we want to, I think, just make it as more identify it more as a public parking lot.
Is there, to identify that as public parking, what's the signage costing for that? Is that?
I think it might be in there. We're actually recommending 150, Chris.
Okay.
That's what,
The total?
yeah. So that, but you're right, I don't see it. So that's probably a couple $1,000 if
Okay,
you want to do,
$1,000.
yeah. Anyway, back to kind of so we're actually looking at really 3 different areas: street resurfacing, match money for some MORPC projects, as well as
I always keep myself confused. When we say match money, that's money set aside that you have to have a match of. But if we don't get the grant, then that.
correct. You don't have to. You're not obligated to the match.
Okay.
Right. But we're at a point now with this MORPC money, is it's been voted on by the MORPC board. Kent and I were at the last meeting where the MORPC board voted on the recommendations. Now they have to amend what they call the State Transportation Infrastructure Program. That's got to be amended. Then what happens is they, plus ODOT, send us a proposed agreement which outlines what our responsibilities are. I want to try to brief you guys in council on what those obligations are financially, so that we know what we're committing ourselves to. I think it's a great opportunity to address.
Basically, that means we're approved, just come up with the match and.
Yeah, but it's not just come up with a match today. It's making sure that you've got money in the future, and worst case scenarios, we've got to come up with close to $500,000 over the next X number of years for this project. So, but it's anyway, that's really what it's kind of an overview. And then we included this spreadsheet. This is just updated today, actually, based on some more recent numbers.
Well, when we did our capital plan last year, obviously we weren't aware yet that we were going to get the grant funding. That didn't become apparent until I think maybe the first part of this year. But especially there's 2 grants there that are connected to how we're utilizing some of our carryover funds from last year. The one is the traffic signalization, which is a little bit more straightforward, and that 250 represents the city's initial portion on that. The more complicated is the point project, just in the timing and when and all that sort of stuff. So what I did is I tried to take at least the current information from our engineers and from ODOT and MORPC and everybody, and looked at this point project over a 10-year period, just to see how it's going to flow and what's going to come in, because it's not just a function of what ultimately might be the city's share. There's issues related to the timing because some of the funds that the grantees have may not be available until 2024. And we may have to front the project to get it operating, to get it moving, and then get reimbursed 2 or 3 years later. So I'm going to walk through real quick this 10. It looks like a lot of numbers, but it's not all that complicated. And one of the things that got changed today was everything pretty much got moved back into 2018 because, apparently it's not going to, it takes them a long time to get rolling on something like this. The top half of the sheet is revenue sources, whether they be city or grants or other sources, and I'll explain those. And then at the bottom, it's the expenditures. The one middle column, though, is ultimately the debt service to help finance it as we move along. On the revenues, there's a couple of different sources, and kind of try to match that up with, this may all still change. The decks constantly get shoveled as far as where the money comes from. The bottom line, there's $3 million of safety grant money. Track money is 1.5 million, and the balance is about 13.2 million of MORPC money. Now, on my spreadsheet, it shows 2021, 2023, and 2024. Something today said it might all come in 2022. I don't know, but that at the end of the day, that just changes that timing. It doesn't really ultimately change how much grant money we're going to get. I have a row in there for Delaware County. Again, we don't have an identified amount. This is kind of a working document. That's why it says draft and what we're working on. You'll see the next 3 lines, Berkshire JED, income tax receipts. Again, with what we're bringing in, that 45, it's a conservative number for 2016, which again, we were in a ramp up mode and the mall didn't even open, I don't think, till June. We did get 55,000. And again, just to throw a number out there to put something in here, it may end up being more than that. We'll see as we move down the road. The next line is Outlet Center NCA. That's what Tom referred to a little bit earlier. At some point we get 1.5 mils of this. Initially, until these things start getting, this NCA gets in place, it won't be, it would be 2018. I really don't know what the amount's going to be. So I kind of looked at, when I said we took in 55,000 from the NCA, I don't know enough about what that's going to be. So combined, it's about $77,000. That's a conservative number, that both of them. Then Tom also mentioned this sales tax surcharge, but my guess is it'll be at least 15, 20 years out before they have their infrastructure. And who knows, they might find more infrastructure they need to build. So that's kind of even less reliable. So I didn't even put an amount in there. But so those funds, as we've indicated, would be applied towards this, at least this portion of the project. The other, there may be some more JED, but there may also be more improvements out there in that whole corridor other than just the railroad overpass. But so that's, and again, it's just a number that's been put out there. And then the other line is city funds, and as you can see, it's 279,400, and it looks like that'll be, I think we had 290 in the email Tom had given you. It looks like that's going to be 2018, and that's going to be the city's share of the initial design money. And so that's where that would go towards, because they arguably are ready. It'll take them a while to get everything lined up, but they're ready to start moving on that. Moving down towards the expenditures, you see that the preliminary environmental and then the final engineering. Then there's an amount that Bill had put in there related to the railroad, just working with them. But so most of these expenditure amounts in here came from Bill and Matt, and I think they're pretty reasonable as far as order of magnitude. Both of them would tell you, till you get that engineering work done, till you get into the point of knowing what that those construction numbers out there in year 2021 of $17.5 million, minus $3 million. It's kind of a little bit of an unknown. But anyways, that shows the expenditures under the improvement cost. I think I added it up with today's email. Then you're looking about $25.5 million for construction, design, and everything involved. The expenditure that says debt service has more to do with the timing of when this all occurs. Because again, if these grants don't come in until after we've started construction, if we're going to in 2021 be in a position to sign a $17-18 million construction contract, I've got to have money in hand. So I might have to issue some short-term notes. So that debt service of 18.18 million kind of corresponds to above there, the revenue where I'm showing a borrowing in 2021 of 18 million. We would pay it back with interest in 2022. I'd have to reissue a similar amount, pay that back. And then in 2024 and 2023, once the grant money, I can reduce down that borrowing. But the net effect is where are we going to be at the end? And that's where I'm showing that roughly, when all is said and done, the city's probably, based on today's estimates, the city's going to be into it to about 7.8 million of the 25.5 million. And of that, at least on early projections, they'll probably have to borrow as much as 6.7 million. We'll use some of our existing funds and some of those JED monies and whatever else, but it's not going to be enough to cover it, obviously. And if we are, and it plays out like this, and we borrow $6.75 million, roughly that's going to cost us $420,000 a year to service that debt if we did a 20-year issue. And what we have to do today, because if the wheels are starting to turn on this, we don't want to go spend $3 million designing a project and then come back and say, I don't think we can come up with our money. So to put it in an annualized amount, I guess the policy decision, or the financial decision city council has to come to conclusion on is, if you looked at it today, as you know what our current capital plans like, if we had to squeeze in a $420,000 payment, you can look at it in that way. There is that potential that we might be able to tap into other sources, not just the county, but others, to reduce that amount. But as it stands now, we only have commitments from the Morpsey Safety and the track money. And so I would say this would probably be on the high end. Hopefully it's less than that. But more than likely, absent us getting a new revenue source, if we ever had another levy that went out and was passed, but this assumes that that's not the case. So this kind of paints the picture a little bit for this big project, because it's, as Tom mentioned, it's not just a matter of us coming up with our match money for design work. Absent having a pretty good budget year in 2016, having some additional capital money to throw at our projects, we would have had to come up with our match to start the design. We'd have had to squeeze that in with something else. So all we're indicating here is we can use kind of that carryover amount for 2016 to fund that. But the bigger picture issue, and I think Tom may touch on that a little bit. I think it ultimately to be, I think, something that council needs to understand what the potential is with this, because yeah, it's great that we got $14-15 million or more of grant money, but as it stands now, it's still going to cost us some money.
It will. I think we need to remember that when we had the levy campaign, we indicated that had the levy passed, our ability to meet the local obligation would have been more manageable. But we never said, if the levy doesn't pass, we're not going to do the point project. It's always been our goal. That was our #1 priority project. And unfortunately, with the levy passing, it just makes it more challenging to do that. But it doesn't take away the need to address the city's most critical congestion points.
So under the expenditures, is that 2018, the $2 million under the PE? Is that the design?
Yeah,
It'll be, once they start the balls rolling, they're going to do their preliminary, their environmental, how they go through these things. And then ultimately they have what they call final engineering. Based on all that other soft preliminary costs, they're going to actually design what it is that's going to get constructed.
But is that, and so I assume that's a combination of in-house and out?
Most of it's going to be contracted out.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, what we really do is we end up managing the consultant in working with ODOT.
I figured looking at it. That's where I'm going is just, I mean, so when they look at this, I mean, how macro do you get? Like, we're looking for planes going to last 25 years.
Yeah,
30 years.
in fact, Chris, that's a great question, because we are required by federal law to evaluate the existing intersection, as well as the alternative that we propose, but to look at other alternatives as well. That's when you evaluate the issue of, well, if you built a bypass, what would that do? If you didn't build the bypass, if you didn't do this design, but you did a roundabout or something, we have to evaluate. We can't just go in there saying we think we have a pretty good basis to say that will improve the situation, but the law requires that you have to look at these other alternatives as well as doing nothing. So that will require us to evaluate. Well, somebody said if you just take care of a bypass, that'll help the point. That's when you'd be able to evaluate that kind of thing.
And that's why I think that number's bigger, that preliminary numbers, because they're.
And there's a lot of, before you get into design, there's a whole process of evaluating these other concept alternatives with public meetings and all
Federal
that.
money
So
at all,
there'll be
yeah.
a lot of that happening, and there's a lot of involvement by the railroad. I mean, I know we all know it. We're kind of designing and building a new bridge, and it's their bridge, and hopefully at some point they can bring more to the table than just what they brought so far. The other point to mention is that we are going to be talking to the county. We've started a conversation with them already, with the county engineer, and we've mentioned to the county commissioners about county participation. Obviously, the county doesn't want to set a precedent, and they have to know that if they're going to participate in a project like this, they can have justification for it. So that will be a separate conversation that we're going to be having with them. But we are very, very fortunate, I think, to have just gone through the process in 2016 with this. This is our first MORPC attributable funding application. We know it was the most consequential project for the city, and the MORPC board has approved it. Now we've got to come up with the resources to make it work. And I see former Councilman Brush in the audience. I know when he ran for council, this was one of the projects that he identified, his constituents identified as important. MORPC agrees with us, the state agrees with us, the feds agree with us. Now we've got to manage the funding of this, which is complicated because it's a big amount of money and it's over a long period of time. So there's a lot of different sources in here.
Well, ironically, you mentioned about council's discussion pre our levy out there. If you recall, one of those scenarios I had to do some calculations was that if the levy passes, but we don't get any grant money to do the point, what would that look like? And I think I gave you analysis that basically is going to take the first 10 years of your new money to pay for the improvement. So we were kind of looking at that as a scenario. Obviously, levy didn't pass, but the grants materialized. And so that's the opportunity that's in front of us.
We're gonna have that discussion to pass it out.
Yeah, I really think that, I agree, and we just haven't had a chance to sit down as a council and kind of at a work session or a retreat and talk about that. And the other thing that we're doing at the same time, and I think council knows this, is we have MS Consulting evaluating an east side traffic analysis, which is, if you fix the point, you still have these other choke areas, you have these intersections. What do you do with William Street and Central in terms of how they move? Do you do one-way patterns? Do you do reversible lane directions depending on the peak hour of the day? So that's happening as well. So hopefully there'll be a lot of conversation with the public this year and next year about the 36-37 corridor and the point replacement project. But we wanted to get this before you tonight. There's really no action, but we'll share it with the rest of council. And then at some point we suggest that maybe in a work session, we can discuss this and then get legislation before you'd actually amend the capital plan to put some of this stuff in place, like the house next door.
So just look at this real quick. What does railroad force account mean?
That means they charge us a certain amount of labor and overhead.
They're gonna inspect everything we do. They're gonna be on top of that, and I can't give you the specifics. Bill or Matt could, but they come up with some numbers basically that we're gonna have to reimburse the railroad for their costs. They're gonna review our plans, and they're gonna have other costs like that involved.
Full-time inspector on the site.
Have you done one of the force account projects?
Yeah, with our Southeast Highland project, we had to do along the railroad bed. You have to pay the railroad inspector his travel, his hotel.
Oh, Chris,
his everything.
Yeah, and that was the frustration that we had during the levy, and we had before the levy, and we still have today, and we'll have for a long time. And that is, it's unfair. The railroad, but we all know that the railroad's response is we have thousands of these bridges, and the traffic is flowing fine as far as our trains are concerned. We understand or sympathetic to the fact that you have congestion issues, but that's not caused by our trains. And our bridge, while it looks like it's old, it is, but it was built for steam locomotives and it could last another 25, 30 years. So our timing is such that we can't wait that long to do something. So anyway, that's what force account is, Chris. So that's really what we wanted to bring you up to speed on tonight with respect to amending the capital plan. It would be, and we are, I think Dean talked about our tax collections at the beginning of this year. We're continuing to monitor those and just.
Yeah, we've had, a little bit of a blip downturn,
Like the state.
as we've indicated in the past. Part of it we knew because of the change in the collection cycles. Some of our quarterly withholding business accounts are now doing it monthly. So in 2016, in the first quarter, we actually had 5 months of collections. The fourth quarter of 2015 plus January and February of 2016. Well, now we're comparing first quarter of 2017 to 2016 and 2016. So it's hard to look at it and say, even though the numbers are less, we got to factor in the fact of just that. And plus, if you've seen, the state's tax collections are way down from their projections. But we've looked at, we monitor on a regular some of our larger employers. There's nothing really that's jumping out at us that's saying, oh, gee, XYZ companies cut their withholding payments from what was $30,000 a month to 15. It's just not anything apparent. So we're going to have to do a little bit more digging just to get a pretty good sense on what we might project through the remainder of the year.
And that could impact some of this, but we at least wanted to get this before you tonight so you're aware of it. The last thing regarding an adjustment to the current budget, and Dean is recommending we do this through a supplemental appropriation to the current budget, is trying to get the comp plan underway. That was something that council made a priority during the budget process, and the late former Councilman DeGenova, I know, was used to talk about that quite a bit, and so we want to at least get the wheels turning on that. So that'll be included as.
Yeah, that'll be a little bit different. That's to amend the plan for something we're going to start. What we're amending with the other stuff is actually amending the plan. And as Chris recalls, sitting through the presentation to Moody's on Friday, we have that targeted year and 17% general fund balance as part of our financial management policies. And after all the dust settled for 2016, even with transferring the additional amounts to the CIP, we ended up at 17.8 or something like that. So as I told Tom, rather than putting that in with this, something that you're going to start right away anyways, that 200 and some thousand or 200,000, whatever, it might cost less than that. We can just do a supplemental and we're still in line with that 17% year-end fund balance.
So we'll get that legislation going so Dave can start the process of, request for proposals for consulting engineering firms. But, and that's something that, Chris, you remember to Moody's about updating the comp plan. And it's overdue, and a lot of the discussions we had last night about growth and impact fees and things like that, some of that will get addressed through the updates.
One of the other things regarding the amendment to the capital plan is we'll present, and I'll give, just like you would see with the capital plan that was adopted, the underlying spreadsheets, and I'll give a narrative of what typically what we try to do, what I've tried to get council to do early in the year, each year, is when we do our capital plan, and again, it's just a plan, it's a 5-year plan, but we use that first year as the basis for budgeting in that next ensuing budget year. But we do this in September, October, then we get all wrapped up into the budget process. Estimates, I like to update it with actual information first part of the year. Plus there's some things that might have changed at a department level. I know Brad had a couple of his projects that he got access to better information. So we know more today than what we knew 5-6 months ago. So I've incorporated what I would consider just tightening down the numbers of a little bit fewer estimates. And those will be somewhat reflected, actually getting the correct carryover balances from projects that maybe didn't cost as much, some that maybe went a little over in 2016. So we've got more accurate numbers. So that'll be a part of the change. But anything that's changing, either the type of projects or a new project or whatever, we'll specifically identify that and say, here's what we're doing. We're adding in money to represent the city's match on the design work for, the point, or to increase our resurfacing in 2017 by $300,000.
And that's why Brad's here. Brad's got, did you want to mention any of your project, Brad?
One big project we have.
If you want to, maybe you should come up here just for the benefit of the recording.
A large project we have programmed for the CIP at the wastewater plant this year is the retrofit with new equipment of our system. We had sand filters down there. They were constructed with a plant expansion in 1987. They've really exhausted their useful life. They're not operable at this time. Therefore, to meet EPA requirements with our state scenic river with phosphorus removal and solids removal, we're looking at going to a tertiary system that involves cloth disc media, much more efficient. We initially had $1.2 million budgeted. We did go off our RFPs with the specific equipment. That equipment came in about $550,000 for the equipment. Now we're looking at doing the complete construction. We have Prime Engineering doing our design right now. They provided a cost estimate of approximately $1.75 million. Therefore, the increase to 1.8 to cover some contingency. That project is wrapping up. We're looking at maybe going out for bids later this year and then starting construction late this year or early next year. But that new piece of equipment should last us, the city, another 25, 30 years, similar to the sand filters did.
So I'll ultimately update even that type of a project. It's not so much we plan to do that, but it's going to cost us maybe $600,000 more than we had in the original. And again, I look at those things, especially the utilities, because we tend not to focus as much time on that. But yeah, that minimizes the flexibility of some other things, but we've got adequate funds there available. Even with the existing plan, the original one at 1.2 million showed $3.9 million and at the end of 2021 of funds available. Well, now it'll be 3.3 million, and just so you can understand that too.
Is that all you had, Tom?
Yes.
All right. Member comments, Mr. Schaefer, anything?
I don't have anything.
I have nothing. Anybody else? All right. Setting a date for next meeting. Any thoughts?
I'm not sure if you want to wait until you've appointed the
Okay.
council person, unless we have to do something
I mean,
sooner.
there's nothing pressing report, but
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
It's really just, hopefully you can report when we brief the full council, kind of
Okay. All right.
try to lead the discussion on what we talked about today.
Okay, well, if nothing else, except there's a need to go into executive session then?
No.
No, we're good?
Yeah.
Oh, I did even better. Motion to adjourn. So moved. It is 5:23.
5:23.
5:23. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Chris.